Paragraph 8 is about repair procedure. It goes through different ways of choosing how many repairs the seller could or could not make and how many the buyer could or could not ask for. But now we're assuming everything is done, all inspections are done, and it's time for the buyer to ask the seller, would you please make these repairs? Well, that is commonly done on a Form 525, called Repair Addendum is the short name for it. It has a whole lot of other words. The Repair Addendum asks about the repairs. Like I said, you just simply enumerate the repairs that the buyer would like to have done. It goes through at the top of it and talks about making some qualifications on this. For instance, that the people making the repair, seller, that you'll use qualified repair workers, whether it's LLR licensed, bonded, or insured people. There can be exceptions. One of the exceptions was basic repairs like painting. I always jokingly say, you do not want me to paint. That is not a basic repair when I'm doing it. I'm fairly task-oriented. I figure if I put one really thick coat of paint on the wall, we don't have to worry about doing a second coat. Well, as you can imagine, there are a lot of runs in the wall when I do painting, so I'm not allowed to do that anymore, and that's okay with me. On page 2 of the form, it has an expiration date. This is because in each of the type requests going back and forth, there are timelines. So the buyer can't just simply say, seller, will you please make these repairs and let me know when you get around to it. There has to be a deadline, so the buyer will then know the response in time to act appropriately. And that's true under repair procedure or due diligence. Of course, under as is, we know no repairs are made, so we're not even talking about this form. Okay. It goes through, the form has some blanks in it for you. Seller, at the very first blank, it says all repairs, the most basic repairs, and has a line there if you want to do some qualifications. Next is you get to check. If I am the buyer and I'm requesting certain repairs, it's probably because I've had an inspection done, and that inspection has told me that these things are wrong and I should ask the seller to fix them. So there's a place there for you to check. Are they or are they not attached? Under the repair procedure, there is a provision that if the buyer is asking for repairs under repair procedure, that's those big 9 systems, that if the seller requests, they must give them a copy of the inspection report. Considering that the goals are the same, buyer wants these things fixed, seller wants to get them fixed, if they've agreed to in a way the buyer will accept so we can go on to closing, it's probably a good idea to give them the inspection report so they can have some idea of exactly what's wrong and how to fix it. Then the paragraph goes on and says, in so many days, the seller will agree to make these repairs. It gives the buyer the right to come back prior to closing and make sure the repairs are made. The next little paragraph goes into best practices. This really isn't a contractual obligation in the least. It just says, here's what seems to work for most people. It gives a bunch of blank lines. Of course, the first one is, write in the repair you want. I think that's rather amusing. Of course, that's what we're doing. We're making a list of the repairs. So it tells you first, write the repair. Now, the second makes some sense. Attach something or specifically reference something that says exactly what the repair needs to be. Avoid vague repair requests. That's in everybody's best interest. If you just, I've heard one time somebody just attached a report, and that was all they did. They didn't fill in the blanks on the page. They didn't list any repairs. They just attached a report. Well, does that mean they want the repair on page 4 done, or the one on page 5, or all of them? So be careful about being very specific. It also talks has a provision and suggests that the buyer list whether this is a seller paid repair or not. And in other words, is it a repair that's required under the repair procedure? That way you can label them knowing that if the seller does all of those, the buyer must buy. The question often comes up, well, may the buyer ask for something, or can the buyer ask for something that's not a seller paid repair? Sure, you can ask for anything. Doesn't mean it has to be done. We've specifically seen in the contract, fogged windows is not a seller paid repair. If the buyer turns over a repair request, and as part of that repair request, they said, I want you to fix the fogged windows, the seller can say, well, I appreciate that information. That's not a seller paid request. I'm not making it. But once the seller then goes through and makes all those repairs under repair procedure, then you're going to contract. Okay? If they fail to complete this, they being the seller, fails to complete any of the repairs, then the buyer has the option of accepting the property in its present condition, negotiating for a different agreement to get repairs made, or terminating this agreement. And this agreement means the repair agreement. We've gotten past the inspections, we've gotten past what's in the contract, we've negotiated now on this form 525 those things that need to be repaired. That the seller is either going to agree or not to agree, and then once both parties have agreed and signed this, then this becomes part of the contract and controls the repair procedure.